What's up? It's Jeff from RetroArcadeGaming.com. That's all one word, and I'm back with another edition of Battle of the Ports. In this series, we look at a specific classic arcade game and see how well or poorly it's been ported to various home console and computer systems over the years. Our featured game this week needs no introduction and is arguably one of the greatest arcade games ever developed. Released by Namco in Japan and Midway in North America, it's Galaga. I'm not going to break this one down, try to explain the plot if there is one. It boils down to this. Shoot the enemies, double up your fighter when you need to, and pay no attention to the hit-miss statistics. They mean absolutely nothing. I've got a dedicated Galaga cabinet awaiting restoration in the garage, and I can't wait to get started on it this spring. Here's a look at the gameplay of the original arcade version of Galaga via MAME. It's actually one of my favorite games, so I may have a hard time stopping here. Have a look at Galaga. Up first, we're going to take a look at the Sega SG-1000 port, released by Sega in 1983 and known by the name Sega Galaga. One of the iconic parts of the original Galaga gameplay was the unique music and sound effects. This port does a pretty good job of replicating those with its limited hardware. Graphically, it looks okay, but it does play a bit choppy. It's not the smoothest port we'll look at. The enemies on rollout seem to have a little hitch in their step. They don't flow smoothly to their position in the formation. The challenge stage has been omitted, which is a bit of a disappointment. For the system it's running on, though, it's actually a pretty good port. As a side note, this version was ported to the ColecoVision as a prototype by Eduardo Mello, but was never made publicly available. Here's a look at the SG-1000 port of Galaga, known as Sega Galaga, from 1983. There were no official Galaga releases for the Commodore 64. The best we could do back in the day was the homebrew text-based port released by Henrik Wening in 1982 and colorized by OTD in 1983. A more graphical version of Weining's port was released as Galaxy in 1983 by Kingsoft. In 2017, a commercial clone was made available by Protovision entitled Galaxians. It costs $4.99, but for the purposes of this video, in my opinion, it strays too far from the original gameplay to include it here. Today, we're going to take a look at the colorized version of Henrik Weining's 1982 text-based port. It sounds horrible, looks horrible, plain and simple. An effort was made to include the challenge stage. The patterns bear little resemblance to those of the actual arcade game. Despite the terrible graphics and sound, however, it's not bad to play if you take it for what it is. The original version was later ported to the Atari 800, which I can't get working for some reason, so we're not going to take a look at it. But just imagine this port, the non-colorized version, on the Atari 800. Enjoy Mr. Weinig's take on Galaga for the Commodore 64 from 1982. Up next, the Microsoft MSX port, which was released in 1984. Who published it depended on the region you lived in. Namco published it in Japan, Sanho in South Korea, and Bug-Byte in Europe. This is a decent port. It plays smoothly, replicates the original sounds fairly well. It does lack in detail, though. The challenge stage is back. It's present, making this probably the best port we've looked at to this point. This was later ported to the ColecoVision by Collector Vision in limited quantities. I'm not able to get my hands on a copy of it, so we won't include that. We won't include any ColecoVision ports in this roundup. Here's a look at the MSX port of Galaga from 1984. If you want, you can also envision this playing on a ColecoVision. Up next, a slew of Japanese computer ports, which are my least favorite to emulate, to be quite honest with you. Most of the emulators for these systems are old and outdated and fail to recognize joysticks, certain display resolutions. They're just problematic. Up first, the Sharp X1 port, which was released by Dimpa Micomsoft in 1984. Again, this is a decent port with a bit more detail than the previous ports, but it's still fairly pixelated. The music replicates well, but the rest of the sound effects are a bit of a disappointment. Fortunately, again, the challenge stage is present. My complaint with this one comes with the emulator it's running on. There's no joystick support that I can tell, at least in Windows 10, so I'm controlling it with the keyboard. The problem is it's with the switches, the way they're coded. When you press the left button, the spaceship continues to move left even after you've let up on the key until you press the centering button. Same with going the other way. It makes the game difficult to play, and there are several emulators available for the Sharp X1. They each have their own unique set of problems. This one I chose because it's the lesser of all evils. Regardless, here's the Sharp X1 port of Galaga, played rather crappily via the keyboard and the poor controls, from 1984. The Fujitsu FM-7 port was also released by Dimpa Micomsoft in 1985. Same control problems as the Sharp X1 version. You have to center the ship to get it to quit moving. Really, again, it's frustrating. Makes this not a whole lot of fun to play. This one replicates the music fairly well, but again, the rest of the sound effects are a bit flat. Graphically, it's a bit pixelated and plays a bit choppy. Here's a look once it loads up of the Fujitsu FM-7 port of Galaga from 1985. Another DIMPA Microsoft port was for the NEC PC-98, again released in 1985. This one looked pretty good, but unfortunately, there are no sounds other than a beep when firing. Again, I'm not sure if that's an emulation issue or just the way the game was released. And since I'm not a big fan of these emulators and these systems, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time troubleshooting them to try to figure it out. It's one of the reasons that I really have not included the Japanese systems in many of my previous battles. I'm just not a big fan of the emulation scene or lack of it. Anyway, here, rants aside, here's a look at the NEC PC 98 port of Galaga from 1985. To continue my rant, there was a Sharp X-68,000 port, which I can't even get to recognize the joystick or the keyboard, so I can't play it. So we're not going to take a look at it today. Instead, we're going to jump to the BBC Micro commercial clone entitled Zalaga, which was released by Aardvark Software in 1985. It looks somewhat similar to Galaga, but sounds nothing like the original. Here's a look at the Galaga clone Zalaga, Z-A-L-A-G-A, for the BBC Micro, 1985. The Atari 7800 port was released by General Computer Corp in 1987. This one gets a resounding meh from me. It plays pretty smoothly, but it really just doesn't look like Galaga or sound a whole like Galaga. The musical tones are okay, but the sound effects themselves are just lacking. It just doesn't have a whole lot of detail graphically, and I don't know, I just don't like it. Have a look for yourself. You make your own decisions. You may think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. The Atari 7800 port of Galaga from 1987. The Nintendo Entertainment System port was entitled Galaga Demons of Death and was released in 1988 in North America by Namco. This is a great port in my opinion. First of all, it's got a badass name, Galaga Demons of Death. It also replicates the look and sounds of the arcade original very well. It's a bit muted in the color palette, and some of the sounds are just a bit off, but otherwise, a very good port. Have a look at Galaga, Demons of Death. I need like the echo or something to go along with it. For the Nintendo Entertainment System from 1988. The Game Boy port was featured in the title Arcade Classics 3 Galaga Galaxians. This was released by Nintendo in 1995. Sounds excellent, looked pretty good for the platform. There's not a whole lot of detail, and it's grayscale, but the lack of detail is more of a limitation of the hardware than on the port. Overall, this is a very good port for the Game Boy. I suggest if you're a Game Boy fan, you pick this one up, because it's very good. Next, the PlayStation port from the 1996 Namco Museum Volume 1 compilation. This is where the line actually starts to blur a bit, as most of the ports from here on out start to look and sound pretty damn good, with just a few exceptions. Included on this compilation, along with Galaga, is Pac-Man, Pole Position, Rally X, both the original Rally X and a new updated version, Bosconian, and Toy Pop. This looks and sounds exactly like a title should on the Namco Museum collection. Have a look for yourself. A commercial MS-DOS clone called Champ Galagon was released in 1997 by Champ Programming. This one actually looks pretty good, but falls just a bit short in the sound category. The sounds aren't quite arcade accurate in a few places, and in my opinion, they sound a bit muffled at times. Overall, though, this is not a bad port if you're a MS-DOS fan. Have a look at the Champ Galagon port, or clone, if we want to call it properly, released in 1997 for MS-DOS. The Nintendo 64 port is next, which was also featured, not also, it was featured in the Namco Museum 64 compilation, released in 1999. This compilation featured Galaga, Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaxian, Pole Position, and Dig Dug 2, because by God, who the hell doesn't want to play Dig Dug 2? Again, in what will become a reoccurring statement pretty much from here on out, it looks and plays almost identical to the original. The Nintendo 64 port of Galaga from the Namco Museum 64 compilation. The Game Boy Advance compilation, Namco Museum, which was also available on the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, the GameCube, and Windows PCs from 2001. The Game Boy Advance port of this is actually a pretty good recreation of the original. I love the Game Boy Advance. I think it's a badass system, especially when you consider it's a handheld. Of all the handheld systems, it's one of my favorites. It had some great titles on it, and this one is no exception. Have a look. The Namco Museum compilation for the Game Boy Advance, 2001. We're going to look at that same port on the GameCube, the same compilation, the Namco Museum compilation, just for comparison's sakes. And again, there's nothing to complain about on this one. Looks good, plays good, sounds good. The Namco Museum compilation for the GameCube. The same systems, the GameCube, Xbox, Windows, PlayStation 2, got the Namco Museum 50th Anniversary compilation, and a watered-down version for the Game Boy Advance. The console versions of this compilation, not the Game Boy Advance one, were actually the first to use emulated arcade ROMs. At least that's what I read on the internet, so it's got to be true. Given that, they play as expected. Let's take a look at the PlayStation 2 port. This time, the Namco Museum 50th Anniversary compilation, 2005. And just for comparison's sake, here's the Game Boy Advance port from that same compilation. I can say with certainty that this one is not actually using the arcade ROMs. I actually prefer the version we looked at earlier on for the Advance myself. The Namco Museum 50th Anniversary compilation on the Game Boy Advance. Enjoy. Guess what? Another compilation. This one, the Namco Museum DS port, which was released in 2007 for the Nintendo DS and features Galaga, Galaxian, Pac-Man, Tower of Zalaga, Mappy, Xevious, and again the all-great Dig Dug 2, along with Pac-Man Versus. As expected, it sounds great, looks great, and plays great. The Namco Museum DS compilation. So we're going into uncharted ground here, and actually going to look at a few more platforms. I'm going to actually attempt to capture gameplay from the consoles themselves and somehow incorporate it into this video. I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but what the heck. We're going to give it a shot. Just know that I don't have a microphone at the time that will allow me to capture audio from my consoles and video at the same time. So we'll just make the best of it. Up first, we're going to look at the Xbox 360 port, which was released to the great Xbox Live Arcade in 2006. This is an excellent port for the 360, and it's reasonably priced at $3.99. Take a look. Next, the PS4 port, which was released to the PlayStation Store, the PlayStation Market, I don't know what you call it, in April of 2016. I've had my PlayStation since December, and I have now exactly 2 games on it. I got Spider-Man, and I've got Galaga. It's actually titled Arcade Game Series Galaga, and again costs a reasonable $3.99. Have a look at the PlayStation 4 port of Galaga, which is pretty darn good. The Steam port, again, was released in April of 2016, is basically the exact same as the PS4 port, identical to it. It's titled the Arcade Games Series Galaga, and it's priced again at $3.99. I actually opted for the 3-pack, which is Galaga, Pac-Man, and Dig Dug, which is priced at $7.99. We're going to be looking at Dig Dug pretty soon, so it only made sense to buy the pack. But here's the Steam port, entitled Arcade Game Series Galaga from 2016. You got an extra $4, pick it up. finally, hot off the store shelves, just picked this up today. It's the Namco Museum arcade pack for the Nintendo Switch. This was released in September of 2018 and features Pac-Man vs. Pac-Man, Galaga, Splatterhouse, Tower of Zalaga, Rolling Thunder, Sky Kid, and Tank Force. Might have some others too. I haven't really dug that deep into it. Literally, just got it home, just opened it up. A little bit costly, in my opinion, at $30. But what the heck? It's got some classic games on it. You can't go wrong having those in your collection. So here is the Nintendo Switch port from the Namco Museum Arcade Pack compilation. That's our look at Galaga ports. I actually love the NES port and pretty much any of the Namco Museum ports. They're spot-on recreations of the actual arcade game, and in some cases, actually emulate the arcade game. I've included a few newer platforms in this release: the 360, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and I'm going to try to continue featuring them in future battles if the title is available. That's it for now. Until next time, happy gaming. Peace.